Jalen and Jacoby. Jalen Rose, something bad happened yesterday. One of our favorite players in the league. We always joke about how it always seems like Luka Doncic is playing banged up. Well, yesterday he was actually banged up. He has a left calf injury. I don't know. It seemed pretty bad. He didn't play the rest of the game. What does this mean for the Mavs and their playoffs hopes?
Mavs are one of those teams that, a lot like the Boston Celtics, really outplayed expectations. Put the Memphis Grizzlies in that conversation too for a different reason. And that guy is the reason why, how he ascended to be a top 5 first team all NBA performer. They've already dealing with some injuries, potentially to Tim Hardaway Jr. and Maxi Kleber. But clearly without Luka, that's a first-round exit. Hopefully he can get healthy.
Yes, hopefully he is ready. Luckily, there is a break before they have to start round 1, unlike other years because of the play-in tournament. But I would say the Denver Nuggets and the Dallas Mavericks are similar in such that they have one player that will take them as far as they're going to go. And without that one player, they'll be in big trouble. Hopefully our guy Luka will get better, and I feel like he will. Another thing that happened, Jalen Rose, is the Warriors had to win to keep from the Mavericks leaping them in the standings, and they did. They beat the Pelicans, but significantly, something that we've been waiting for, Klay Thompson had a 40-point game.
Yeah, he's sneakily put together some really good games since his return. And the Golden State Warriors got a big game the previous night that they played from Draymond Green.
Yeah.
And Kuminga's playing quality minutes up front. You know, Poole is really turned into a bucket, able to create off the dribble and navigate in and out of traffic, as you see him right there finishing at the hoop. So this idea that people are going to just overlook the Golden State Warriors, I don't understand where that thinking has come from. If Steph Curry comes back and resembles a version of himself, like the Golden State Warriors still have to be, behind the Phoenix Suns, because the Suns have distinguished themselves as the best team in basketball. And the Memphis Grizzlies, to me, have earned the right to be number 2.
Yep.
But the Golden State Warriors ain't to be overlooked.
As you see there, the Warriors will be playing the Nuggets in the first round, which will be an exciting series. I expect it to be a close series. And the Warriors are a team that I could see losing to the Nuggets in the first round. It just matters which Warriors you're going to get in that series. And when you look at those standings, we know two of the series in the Western Conference, but 2 of the series are still to be determined because of the play-in tournament, and we turn our attention to that. When you look at the play-in tournament, we have a very interesting 7-8 matchup between the Timberwolves, who, like the teams you mentioned earlier, have exceeded expectations, and the Clippers, who no one talks about, but they're 2 games over 500, and they didn't have their best players for the majority of the year.
The Clippers have been really impressive. So have the Timberwolves. And the thing, as you mentioned, with the playing without Kawhi Leonard, Zubac and Reggie Jackson playing those quality minutes, and man getting a chance to play. And now you're getting Paul George back to the lineup. And so the Clippers are equipped to be a problem for a team in the playoffs, but clearly not a contender without Kawhi. Now, the Timberwolves, for them to be in this position.
Good position, host the game.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful thing. And Karl Anthony Towns leading the way, and the toughness that Patrick Beverley and Anthony Edwards seem to infuse into that team, and not backing down to opponents, and D'Angelo Russell making some big shots late in games. And so it's good to see fresh blood, new teams hanging on the rim in the playoffs. And that's what I'm looking forward to seeing this year with Minnesota.
Jalen, eventually we had to talk about it, but we didn't want to talk about it early in the show.
What's that?
The report, Frank Vogel is no longer going to be the head coach.
Oh, yeah, it's a shame what happened to Flip.
We all saw this coming, right? I
saw it coming. That's why I went solo.
That somehow, some way, Frank Vogel was going to be one of the heads that had to roll. Who do you expect to be the next Lakers head coach?
Too early to call, but I'm going to tell people to put some respect on Frank Vogel's name. And here's why. Always remember, LeBron delivered a championship with the Lakers. That was Frank Vogel's first season coaching that team. And basically 2 calendar years later, he's being ousted. Now, you can look at all of the moves that you say shoulda, woulda, coulda, but the bottom line is this. If you're going to have Anthony Davis for 50% of the year, LeBron James only for a little bit more than that, the Lakers aren't going to be in a play-in next year. No. I could just tell you that right now. No. So to answer your question, whoever's going to coach, if the AD and LeBron both play the same number of games they played this year,
doesn't matter.
They ain't getting out of the first round next year anyway.
People say I look like Frank Vogel, so shout to him. And number two is he's a defensive coach. Like the reason they won in the bubble was because of their defense. And if you look at their roster, all of their defensive players outside of AD who wasn't available were no longer on the team. So I don't necessarily think that this is his fault. But I will say this, he did bring the Los Angeles Lakers a championship. And it's funny that you mentioned him and LeBron, because another thing that Frank Vogel has forgotten for is all those Pacers Heat series that went a little further than maybe they should have. And Frank Vogel was a key piece of those. Now, Jalen, you've got huge responsibility this evening. You have to put in your votes. He's Jalen Rose. I'm David Jacoby. We are Jalen and Jacoby. Jalen, what is it that we get to people? Yes. What they want. The NBA regular season is officially over, and there is way too much for us to discuss. But we're going to try to get to all the major things that we learned from this regular season and yesterday. And in particular, one thing that was decided is the Brooklyn Nets are going to be the number 7 seed in the Eastern Conference, meaning they will host a play-in game versus the Cavs. And they're lurking and looming as a threat to the top players and teams in the Eastern Conference.
Brooklyn! I'm so very happy this time of year, Jacoby. It's just a celebration of the regular season. And the Brooklyn Nets, imagine James Harden was on this team. They did a blockbuster deal that added Andre Drummond, that added Seth Curry. They hope to get Ben Simmons. But they still have Kevin Durant, who averaged 30 this year. Still was terrific. Kyrie Irving, just a dazzling scorer. Like, just to watch his loud buckets on a nightly basis are incredible. And now they have a chance to secure the 7 if they win against the Cavs, or if they lose, they're the 8th seed, which means
they gotta beat the winner of 9-10 to be the 8th seed.
Right. Either way, once they get in, they got to play against a really tough opponent.
Yep.
At the 1 spot or the 2 spot.
Yep.
Now, if you're them, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Celtics and Robert Williams' injury. But for the Nets to recover and make the playoffs and have a chance for the 7th seed after having prolonged losing streaks.
11-game losing streak this season, dog.
11-game
losing streak. I don't think the Pistons did that.
Correct. That's why I like to acknowledge the journey as the regular season ends, because sometimes people forget the ebbs and flows that teams have had to go through to reinvent themselves to get to this point. It's going to be great to watch them in the playoffs.
Cleveland has had a great start of the season. They've had some injury, things happened. They lost Allen, they lost Mobley. But I don't expect them to beat the Nets. But you talked about Robert Williams. If the Nets win at home in the 7-8 game, they'll be facing the Boston Celtics. You talk about Robert Williams, but also looming is Ben Simmons. I assume we would never see Ben Simmons in a Nets uniform this entire season. However, there are now reports that he could be back for the first round of the playoffs. We're not, doctors, we're not chiropractors, but what do you think about these reports?